the longest it's taken. There it is. Boom. We're live. How you
Nice.
doing, Phil?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Man, I am great. We were talking a little bit earlier that I have been pushed back into my garage studio. When I finally had made it back out, I am back to the garage. So I'm doing good, but it's about 95 degrees in here, and I don't want to open the door so I don't catch any of the road noise. And I'm just like interviewing in a sauna. So I feel great. I'm going to be even better after this. I'm going to have all this energy spent. But it looks beautiful where you are. What have you been up to? Where are you at?
We're in Northern California, so we're Loomis, right in between Sacramento and Lake Tahoe, right in the foothills.
That's amazing.
It's probably still about 90 degrees outside, but in the office right here, it's nice right now. So
That's nice. Are you guys on lockdown? Are you guys experiencing like really heavy, strict lockdowns like they are in LA?
like our immediate area right here is not too bad because we're in a smaller community. If you
Mhm.
go like Sacramento and everything, it's full lockdown down there. Restaurants there opened up for a little bit, and now it seems like they're back closed. Um, we got a couple good little spots by the shop right here that don't really want to follow the rules, so it's nice. We can still go have lunch there and not worry
Yeah.
about it. Try to live a normal life.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, let's just jump into it. How have things been? I mean, this has been one of the weirdest times in, recent human history. How have you guys been holding up? How is your family? How are you?
Everybody on our side's good and healthy. In the very beginning, we were all kind of tripped out the first week, and see everything on the news. And Bo, my co-driver, and I weren't getting together as much. And now we're kind of just all went back to normal life.
Mhm.
I mean, being a fabricator and owning the race shop here and doing all this, I'm not out gallivanting too much. I'm pretty much either home sleeping or in the shop working on something.
Yeah.
So life for us hasn't changed too much, except the shop here, No Limit. I mean, it's if anything, I'd say it's probably increased us a good 25% on business since all this.
That's
Uh,
crazy. That's just nuts because I actually had another vendor on a couple weeks ago, and they said that they're hitting, I think, 175% projection on all their sales. They like are just going way over what they normally would be doing.
yeah.
What do you think it is? Are people just bored at home?
I mean, our immediate area here, we've seen a ton of wrecked cars. I think people aren't going and doing other stuff, so they're all going out on the weekends. And you got so many people out there; they're using their equipment more and needing replacement parts for it. I've talked to a bunch of people, and I think the theory kind of is if you're not going to go to Hawaii or go to Europe on vacation, so people are spending money on off road right now because they can go out in the desert and feel safe with their family out there and still get to go enjoy some normal life.
Yeah, yeah. So let me ask you this. You mentioned you're in Northern California. What is the terrain like you around? Because I know, you have the desert in Southern California and a bunch of different terrains there, but
Yeah.
you guys have quite a bit of vegetation on the northern side, right?
Yeah, we're really like, if you love single track on a dirt bike, which we do all the time, it's awesome riding here. A lot of like mountain fire road type roads.
Mhm.
So for us, like anytime we go test in the desert car, we always go to Reno. Reno's like an hour and a half from the shop. So then
Wow.
we got like the whole, backside of Vegas to Reno course that we'll go test on. Immediately though, I mean, you got Rubicon and Fordyce that are both within an hour and a half from us. So rock crawling's awesome, just not desert within 2 hours, hour and a half, 2 hours from here.
Yeah. So let me ask you, because I saw a video of you recently on the Rubicon. I had Phil Licciardi on recently, and he kind of talked about how the Rubicon has just kind of gotten, I don't know the right word for it, but more popularized and kind of like reduced down into what it used to be. What's it like now? Is it still something? So I'm in Nashville. Is it
Yeah.
still something like you would say, hey, man, you need to ride this trail at least once?
Yeah, if you haven't done it, you got to go do it. I think for us, I'm 33 now. I was going there when I was 18, like every single weekend, and like a beat up Toyota rock crawler. That's really what started my whole 4-wheel thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's changed in, they've exploded some sections to get people through there easier because I think they thought it was eroding the trail by having the section so technical.
Mm-hmm.
My opinion on it is they just let way more people on the trail that probably shouldn't necessarily be in there. Or I shouldn't say they shouldn't be in there, but their vehicle's not prepared to be in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rubicon's awesome. We went a couple weeks ago on like a random Wednesday where Tuesday we're like, hey, let's go run Rubicon. I'd never done it in a side-by-side before.
Mm-hmm.
Super fun trail though. Scenery's awesome. I prefer Fordyce. It's a little bit more of a hidden trail. It's more technical, and you're like along a river the whole entire time. So there's a bunch of awesome camp spots. But Rubicon side by side's super fun.
So let me ask you, I got two questions there. You hit Soup Bowl in your side by side, right?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm used to seeing. I come from Jeeps before I was in UTVs. I used to see Jeeps on 40-inch tall tires having a real tough time coming through there, and even some like tube chassis buggies having issues in there. But I mean, side by sides are to this weird point where they can literally do it all on a fractional tire size. What's it like? You mentioned going there in your old Toyota, and now you're side by side. What's it like having a rig that's just so much more advanced in the technology?
The side by side's way smoother through the whole trail.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
Granted, the tire size is smaller, but the whole vehicle is smaller, so it's like a whole different line choice that you're taking through there. The nice thing about the side by side is the whole bottom is a giant skid plate. So like when I was in rock crawler before, you're always worried about a drive shaft. So really the side by side, you can pretty much, we run the factory UTV skid plates on all of them. You can pretty much, if you can drive on the belly pin and not get high centered, you're going to make it through there.
Yeah.
Like Soup Bowl, I was used to like a line in my buggy that was like completely different. So probably before that video you saw, I tried the other line like 2 times and it was just too short of a wheelbase to make it.
Yeah. Well, that's what I thought. I mean, I was sitting there watching it, and I know that it seems, again, never have been there in person. It seems that it's really like a real like kind of slow turn as you're going up, and to me, when I see a side by side going up it, I'm like, no, you're not. Like, you can't do that. What is that?
Yeah, there was like 4 or 5 guys that were with us that go to Rubicon all the time. Like, there's no way you're going to make it up this thing. I'm like, dude, I'm going to go until I either make it or land on my grip. But wheel speed, like I used to rock crawl, had 22 REs and 90 horsepower in a heavy vehicle, and now it's like we're 1,700 pounds with over 200 horsepower. So
yeah, that's crazy. Now my other question for Fordyce was Fordyce's water crossings. Are those bypassable at all, or I mean, are you going to have to get in so let me ask you this: side by side at Fordyce, you're saying this is your favorite trail. Are you not underwater?
You're getting wet. Yeah, you're for sure. The first time I went there in the side by side, I stuffed all my sweatshirts behind the seat, and when it got cold, I pulled them out and they were soaked. You got to definitely watch the river flow. There's a website you can go on. You can see what PG&E, the electrical company, is letting through the river right then. You're definitely not going on a high flow weekend through there because the river crossings are getting so dug out that, I mean, you're sometimes in like a Jeep, you're over a 40-inch tire,
Yeah, and that's the videos that I've seen is 37, 40s, and I think a guy on 35s, and he was like really in a tight spot. And when I had a rock bouncer UTV, like a little razor bouncer, and we went out to Windrock, and it's what I assume Fordyce is like, just on a much smaller scale. And I remember thinking, yeah, I'll be fine going through this water, and you kind of feel the skid plate like boated out first, and then the front end just went woo, and I just remember seeing water over the front, and I was just like, I can never do this. My entire car just got like, I've lost it. The car's gone, and I would be so scared to go in like Fordyce level water.
Yeah. Sorry, my phone started taking off on me there.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Yeah, it's definitely something to watch there. A lot of the videos you see are maybe people that haven't been there before, and they just bomb straight across the river. When really, if you just dip down a little bit, and obviously if you follow the ripples in the water, it's a little bit shallower. I think knowing where to cross, you got 4 water crossings there, and I would say 2 of them are pretty deep.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I didn't see someone who doesn't ever think about it or do water crossings or anything. I wouldn't even have put any thought into like watch where the ripples are, because that means it's obviously a little bit more shallow.
Yeah,
interesting. See, I'm learning already. This is already good.
Now you got to come through Fordyce with us.
Man, I'll tell you what, if I ever make it out there, I doubt I'll come back with a razor, because I'm going to run it through everything I possibly can while I'm on that side of the country. And wherever the last park is, if I leave it there, I leave it there. And I bet I had some fun.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you, I briefly mentioned this to you before we started recording. I don't get starstruck very often. And you're a champion. Like, you are a multiple time champion, and not only a champion, but you're a UTV world champion. So, like, the starstruck kind of hit me when we finally got everything lined up. UTV World Championships. Can you tell me a little bit more about the event, kind of how the feel of it goes? You know, how you guys did in your races that were there? Because I'm East Coast, and you know, Best in the Desert, the Mint 400, all those desert races. To someone like me on the East Coast who, you know, doesn't know anything about that, I just think of, you know, okay, those videos that Polaris and Can-Am puts out where there's like random shrubs and they're just like going through whoops in the desert. But I know that there's more to it than that. So can you tell me a little bit about those races?
Yeah, I can kind of give you, I guess, a little background. I mean, YouTube World Championships is what, I guess, what really put us on the map. And I guess I'll get into that whole thing. We raced a local series around here, a Vora series, which is like a small desert series. Bo, my co-driver, and I, Bo actually built a side-by-side. He worked at a powder coat shop we were using, and I had no interest in side-by-sides. I went down there, I saw his, I was like, man, this thing looks fun. At the time, I was building Ultra 4 cars, and I was just, to build myself an Ultra 4 car, I was priced out of it. So when I saw his, I'm like, oh, maybe I should get into racing the side-by-sides. Anyways, asked him if he wanted to co-drive with me. We raced the Vora series. We won overall in UTV. Vora does an overall between all classes. We ended up beating everybody, so we took the entire overall. So then I said, well, let's go try Best in the Desert. It seemed like the most competitive series to go race in. I did one of the stadium super truck races in a side-by-side at the Orange County Fairgrounds down there for the cool show. And I actually compression fractured my back in that race.
Oh my gosh, man.
So right at that time is when the Can-Am was coming out. I'm like, well, you know, I'm not racing, so let's build the Can-Am on a whim. And I thought I would just do it to bring more attention to the shop. And that's what got me in the Can-Am originally. We went and raced the Parker race, you know, hoping for a top 10 maybe. Ended up, I think, 5th at our very first Best in the Desert race.
Dude, that's crazy.
Met one of the engineers from Can-Am at that race. Just, you know, guy came up with his French accent. I didn't even know who he was, and kind of started that relationship there. Went on to YouTuber World Championships. Started dead last on the last row. The car, when you do the dead engine starts, you go to start the car and you can't even hear it, so you need to like watch the RPM gauge to see when it fires up.
Yeah.
I thought the car started, had my foot to the floor, it didn't go.
Oh,
couldn't restart the car with my foot to the floor, so I had to let off. Next thing you know, the whole row's gone. So I mean, that first YouTuber World Championships, you couldn't have started any more last than we did. At the time, my pit crew wasn't really into, you know, we were all new to it, so we didn't know about tracking and time split and corrected time and everything. And somebody came over to my dad like 2 laps from the finish and said, hey, I think they might be leading this thing, you know. We had no clue what place we were in.
Yeah.
We ended up crossing the finish line, I guess physically second. We'd made our way through the whole pack. Justin Lambert crossed first.
How did you cover so much ground?
I don't know. I mean, the YouTube World Championships on that 17-mile loop, it's just, there's so many cars everywhere the whole time. You don't know if you're passing a lapper or somebody you're racing against or what. They held us at the finish line there and said, hey, you guys might have won this thing. And we ended up winning by, I think, like 16 seconds. And so that was like, you know, another person from Can-Am was there. They came over. That really like jump started my whole racing career, I guess. You know, it wasn't something that we were definitely anticipating in our second ever Best in the Desert race.
Yeah, that's pretty. It seems like there's a select group of guys. And I'll be honest with you, I've interviewed a couple of the other Can-Am factory drivers, and it seems like this common trend between all of you guys where you guys just have this, I don't know if it's, I guess this is the question, is what are you guys doing? Because you, Hunter Miller, Dustin Jones, all you guys, you know, you kind of like dip the toes and like, you know, go kind of that pro-am level. And then all of a sudden there's just this rocket ship launch to, you know, the top, essentially.
Yeah.
What are you doing that's making you so successful? Is it preparation or, well, I mean, is it just driver, co-driver? What is it?
I mean, I think it's a combination of the whole strategy. I think I got an awesome co-driver. Bo, my co-driver, actually does all the prep on the race car. So
Wow.
it's nice to have somebody in the car that's the one that's putting the car together between every race.
Yeah.
I'll do all the fab work on it, and he'll do all the mechanical work on it. It's hard, people say, why are you winning? And I don't really know why, but we definitely put a ton of effort into it.
Mm-hmm.
We don't just throw money and parts at it and go show up to a race with a part that's untested just because it was more expensive than the next part,
Mm-hmm.
Anything that we do, we're going to put double the race miles on it before the race. And then if it works, we're going to put fresh ones in and race with it. I think we just have a great team of people that is like really wrapping their head around the whole thing. And I have, comes down to a strategy. You only need to beat somebody by 1 second,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's so funny, people always want to ask, how are you winning? And like, it's funny, I ask that question, but it really comes down to a mindset thing. And you know how your gut just tells you when you are talking to someone and when you see somebody, you're like, okay, that's it. That's the thing. It seems like all you guys have the thing that just makes the winner. So hats off to you guys. And that's awesome. That's crazy though, that your team, for the UTV World Championships goes in, you guys don't know like and really how to track the race. And then the next thing you know, you guys are like, hey, they're in contention. That's crazy. What did they relay that back to you while you were still on the race course?
Yeah, with 2 laps to go out of whatever it was, 10 laps there. And, the funny part was at the time we were more stressed because we'd only raced Parker in the Can-Am. We didn't really have any seat time in it.
Yeah.
And we weren't even sure if we should stop for fuel or not for fuel. I mean, now we have enough data. We know exactly what we're getting at all the different tracks.
Yeah.
But at that time we're just going, we just don't want to run out of fuel.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. You're, cruising your race, you're locked in at your race pace. You get the information over the radio. It says, hey, you guys might be in the lead. You have 2 laps left. What is the thought going through your head?
We honestly, we didn't turn it up at all. We just stayed exactly at what our pace was. I feel like that's like the one benefit that we've been having throughout the whole season or the last couple seasons is we've figured out like how long our parts are going to last. So if it's a 200-mile race, I'm going to come with my car pretty whooped at the end of 200 miles,
Yeah.
If it's a 500-mile race, I'm going to come in with it. I'm going to be able to, I know the difference that I can push the car to make it the distance.
That's unique because I've never heard someone explain it that way. A lot of times, let me step back here. What parts do you guys make for the car?
I mean, we obviously do the chassis of the car, but we keep a lot of the stock chassis. We do all of our own front A-arms. We do our own front bulkhead. We machine all of our own bushings, spindle pins, radius rods. We actually use factory trailing arms that are just one of our weld-on gusset kits.
Wow, cool.
I mean, pretty much anything that's fabbed on the car besides a fuel cell and stuff, we're building here.
Okay, so that's why I ask, because a lot of guys who make their own parts pretty much for the entire car, they seem to, kind of either have the mentality of like they'll last forever or, they're built to withstand, what the frame can withstand. It's kind of that there's always this breaking point. But I like how you like measure, like you have a unit of measure that says I need the car to last this long and I'll take it up to the line for this of race. I don't think I've ever heard anybody explain it like that. And I think that's a really good way to say it because obviously for a 200-mile race, you could drive it way different than a 500-mile.
Yeah. And we've got, we have 3 replicas of my car out there racing and I work with the customers all the time. So we all share data with each other. Cool. So really instead of like, a 1-car team, I have, 3 cars that we're getting information and, this happened to this one, that happened to this one. And it really benefits all of us,
Yeah, absolutely. Now, let me ask you this. Your iterations of the car that keep going, you guys make the chassis. And I actually was first exposed to you this year at King of Hammers. I really kept a closer eye on the UTV stuff this year. Obviously, had great success at King of Hammers. Obviously, an awesome event for Can-Am, all that kind of cool stuff. The chassis you guys have, it looks different because it looks higher. Like I know that it's just a suspension setting. It's just preload. It's just all these things.
Yeah.
It looks like you have kind of figured out how to have the most high performance and highly efficient chassis. Can you tell me a little bit about the design and what you've done to make it feel that way? Because just looking at it, I can see it.
Yeah, I mean, our King of the Hammers car is way, way different than, say, my Best in the Desert car.
Right.
We spent a ton of time down at Hammers pre-running and playing in the rocks and learning all the trails. We were hanging up on the rockers, so we decided to boat side that car. So we took a stock chassis. I started drawing it all up in SolidWorks, was going to get all wild, and ended up just coming in on the weekend with a cutoff wheel and cutting the whole side of the car off and just going back old school and freestyling the chassis.
Yeah.
So like seating position, everything in that car is the same. I've lowered the dash about 6 inches in the car for visibility. The sides are cut. There's 10 inches cut off at each side of the car and brought up 10 inches. So we've, it's got a stock tank in there. It's really got a lot of stock stuff. We just cut a ton off the side of the car and made it go through the rocks. The weird part about Hammers was we built this car. We had a pre-runner we were using. We built this car. I drove it for about 2 minutes before qualifying and then qualified in it, prepped it for the race and raced it. So we had no seat time going into the race in a boat-sided car because we didn't want to beat up the only car that we had that was boat-sided.
Dude, first off, you're a madman for doing that. That's crazy. Second, why it seems like a couple guys that are racing right now, they're boat-siding the cars, especially the King of Hammers guys. Why, or maybe is Can-Am looking at this as a positive, a thing that they could implement into other vehicles? Does it cut into legroom significantly or something? I don't know why Can-Am wouldn't kind of institute maybe like the Rock Edition, having both sides.
Nothing that they've informed me of that they would plan on doing that. It was Hunter, Cody, and myself and Bo down there pre-running. We left one of the works races and all went out there together just to kind of actually do like a little bit of teamwork down there.
Yeah.
We all decided to boat side our cars. So they had S3 build those cars for them. We were all kind of sharing pictures back and forth. Obviously, as for Can-Am, we want to keep the cars as stock based as possible. So they get information off of the car and keep them stockish looking for marketing as well.
Yeah, definitely.
This race, we kind of said, hey, we're going to cut this car up and make it really go through the rocks,
Yeah. Now, see, I look at that though, and if I'm someone at Can-Am, especially if I'm a marketing guy, it's probably hard to convince an engineer that they need to change their design. I'm a software engineer, so anytime somebody tells me I need to change my code, I'm immediately defensive, and I have to ask why. So you would think though, you just named everyone on the podium, the top three at King of Hammers. You would think like there's probably something to this. So I don't know if I actually I'm in the works right now with having a guy from Can-Am Factory from the actual team themselves come on the show soon. So maybe I'll table that question and ask them.
Yeah, I mean, you take like a regular RC car, it's got the steel rocker behind the panel there. So it's already, it does have it's got reinforcement there. Mm-hmm. But if you went and ran Rubicon or Ford S or anything, you would never even think you needed the boat side. I think King of the Hammers is unique because, I mean, the cars shouldn't even go through those trails. What I mean?
Sure, yeah.
It's such I've done a ton of rock crawling. That place is like so unique, the difficulty of the trails,
Now, where is your favorite place to ride?
Probably Johnson Valley down there. Even the desert down there is super fun.
Is all desert the same? Let me start there.
No, not at all.
Explain the differences, because I had a feeling that would be the answer.
Yeah, I mean, you get like northern Nevada, and you start getting like way rockier terrain. You go to, say, Johnson Valley, and it's a lot softer and sandier everywhere. But Johnson Valley, you get like a bunch more washout areas, so it's all pretty different, I would say.
Johnson Valley rocks, those rock trails, obviously, giant rocks themselves, but you mentioned that's kind of a place that's unique on its own right. Can you put into words what makes Johnson Valley so unique, why it's home of King of the Hammers?
Man, I got a soft spot for that place. Like when I was just out of high school and we were rock crawling all the time, they were doing the tin bender jamborees. I don't know if you ever heard about those.
Yeah, actually.
So this is like before King of the Hammers was even a race idea, that was like our one trip that all me and my buddies, we'd all save our money and all carpool down there and go down and do the tin bender jamboree. So it was just like it was a fun event it was like a mini Hammers back then. They had band stuff on the lake bed. And then we started doing the Ultra 4 stuff and going down there. And then I had the opportunity with Can-Am to go race the side-by-sides down there. When I first pulled into those trails in a side-by-side, it was like, are we really, like, I was thinking we were going to be winching all day,
Yeah.
We've still, like, out of 3 King of the Hammers, we've pulled winch line 1 time in a side-by-side. And that was it.
That's insane. That's
absolutely insane. That was just a driver mistake on my part, not this year, but the year before. And I broke some parts and made it. If I wouldn't have broke the parts, I wouldn't have pulled the winch line.
Yeah. Wow. I'm just, so obviously I have a RZR, and it seems like to me that there's been and I'm going to beat this dead horse for a second. All my listeners, I say this every episode, some listeners are tired of it. There is a momentum shift towards Can-Am right now. Can-Am has had this huge shift after King of Hammers, not only on the professional race side, but also in the recreation side.
Yeah.
I want to know, in your opinion, being a Can-Am guy, what do you think it would take for the RZRs, for the Yamahas, for the KRX, the Kawasaki's? What would it take for those cars to be, I want to say, match the hype of the Can-Am that's out there right now?
I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with, the saying race on Sunday and sell on Monday. I think that Can-Am's been pretty dominant in racing over the last couple, really since the X3 came out.
Yeah.
And then if you just go down to the specs of it, you look at the wheelbase. I think the wheelbase in the 2-seater is more ideal. I think the clutching system and what people are hearing about belts, I think the belts are lasting a lot longer. The horsepower numbers are up on the Can-Am. The wheel travel numbers are up. They've got kind of the whole package right now,
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say for somebody to come compete, they really either need to go start winning all the races in the other cars, or get those spec numbers up to the same as the Can-Am.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, again, I've talked about it ad nauseum a little bit, but I think the Pro XP fell real flat, and it's more creature comfort than it is a high performance vehicle. So it's very interesting to see how it all has laid out. But again, I'm actually going to have Polaris on as well, so we're going to get both of the two battling heads there.
Yeah, I hope that all of them step it up even more and more. I think the more competition, the better for all of us.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's one thing that I see people. Facebook is a funny place. I'll just say it like that. Facebook and social media, because people will go to war for nothing. And I'm so excited the fact that Polaris has lost the momentum, because as a Polaris guy, I know the next car they come out with, it better be the best thing that they've ever seen, or it's just going to be an even further step behind. And I know that show, or the release show, should be next month. So very excited about it. But anyways, tell me just about a time in racing that you'll never forget. Is there any one moment outside of that first UTV World Championship where you were, it's just really memorable for you?
I mean, yeah, that one's for sure. It stands out a lot. Probably last year, Vegas to Reno.
Okay, so is it a literal race, from Vegas to Reno?
It's BD to Dayton, so it's about an hour closer from each direction.
Gotcha.
But it's it's still 540 miles last year. I think it's going to be 550 miles this year. Last year, we were leading the race. Well, I guess I've got a couple stories. The first year of Vegas to Reno that we won, we rolled the car at like mile 100 in the lead. I was catching a truck through like a real tight tree section. Probably the dust was so bad, I was probably going 5 miles an hour, and I literally hit a tree at 5 miles an hour I didn't see coming, and was on my roof in the middle of the race course. Luckily, the truck's dust that we were in, he was stuck and like burning out off the side of the hill, and that's where all the dust was coming from. They got out and helped us flip it back over. So we went from starting the race first, leading the race, to upside down to maybe 15 cars back, and then fought our way all the way up to the front, and ended up catching the race leader like 5 miles from the finish.
Dude, that's crazy.
We needed to pass him and put 5 minutes on him in corrected time in 5 miles, which was impossible.
Yeah.
I just put in my mind, I said, I want to cross the finish line first. I was fully satisfied getting second. Right when we went to go by him, he clipped a rock and broke the front wheel and had to get out and change the tire.
Oh,
We ended up passing him and making up the time on him and ended up winning the race. So it was the whole day was like a roller coaster. It made 500 miles go by so fast.
oh my gosh. So let me ask you, is it more, which would you prefer, chasing a leader or being the one who's setting the pace?
I'd way rather set the pace. And
Okay.
I think I'm one of the few. I hear most people say, "Hey, I want to follow. I want to see whatever pace everybody else is going to set." I want to always try to set a pace that I think I can sustain, but hopefully get people to chase and break them out. You know?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, think about it like this. If you hadn't pushed, when you're in second, you need to make up that corrected time. If you hadn't pushed as hard as you did, old boy may have never had the pressure or never made the mistake to get himself a new wheel.
Yeah.
So very, very impressive. Very cool. Let me ask you this. Have you ever been to the East Coast?
I've been to New York once. My wife's a hairdresser, and she went to a class out there. I don't know, some hair thing, and so I went and just cruised around like downtown New York by myself.
What'd you think?
Oh, to be honest, like where I live, like there's no traffic where I live. I'm not like a big city person, and for me, that was like a culture shock.
Yeah, yeah, I feel the same way.
I don't think I'll go back.
Yeah, so I've been to New York and LA and all the big cities, and man, I can't stand it. I'm just, everyone's frustrated driving. I get frustrated driving, and it's awful. I'm not a big fan. I like space from people.
Yeah.
So you've been to New York. Have you ever thought about making like a wheeling trip out to the East Coast to come do either trail riding or, for example, the Ultra 4 race that's this month on the 24th, the Teardown in Tennessee, which I believe that I'll be at.
Yeah.
You ever thought about coming to race out here?
No, it looks fun. Yeah, I watch all the videos. I'm not sure how pumped I am on all the mud that I see, but the rest of it looks awesome.
So I'll tell you this. A lot of the videos really highlight the fact that there's mud. A lot of times, like especially in that in the track they're going to be racing for the Teardown, I can think of two like mud puddles where it's basically the big rock bouncers and the 40-inch tall tires and stuff. They've dug like holes under rocks and like water sits there. So you'll just have forever puddles. But what happens is obviously, when you're running at speed, it puts it all over you. So there's really not that much actual mud unless it rains. If it rains, ignore everything I just said. But it's really not too bad, especially the parks that Ultra 4 has chosen to race at in the past and this year. It's like the Adventure Off-Road Park where they're doing the Teardown in Tennessee is one of the roughest parks in the state, just because you go from open, like short course and an open line back into the woods to immediate just rocks big enough that are like, how you have like chatter rocks?
Yep.
They're just bigger than that. So it's just enough where you have to like just deal with it and the whole time. And it's just constantly shifting like that. It's just not, I don't know. I had a race there. I raced one of the Pro Rock series, which is the Southeast or East Coast race series. And I'm 25 and my back was hurting and it was rough. It was absolutely rough. So don't take the videos is what I was getting at. Don't take the videos for what they are.
Yeah. It's kind of like our desert racing, you see all the pictures, like Silver State, you see all the pictures of like the crazy silt in the video. And it's like, everybody's like, oh my gosh, it's so silty. Yeah. It's like, yeah, that's like a half-mile stretch that all the photographers are at. The whole rest of the race, it portrays to be on that way on social media, but the whole race isn't like that,
Yeah, absolutely. And you're exactly right, because I know the video that's for the Teardown that was a couple years ago or last year, I don't remember exactly which one it was. They were sitting right at the mud puddles, like the only two mud puddles on the entire track. Yeah. But yeah, it would be cool, man. And I love getting people's opinions, that have been across the country, because as someone who's just recreational, I love the trails we have here because I can get, really sticky, gritty rock. I can get slick rock and a little bit of everything here. And the one thing we don't have within like reason or, reasonable drive is dunes. Yeah. So I'm going to hit the dunes someday. Are the dunes just horsepower? What would you tell someone who's never been? How would you prep them for it?
No, it's funny you ask. I've actually never been to the dunes in a side-by-side. I've been on a bike one time up to the Oregon dunes. We're actually, the guys are out in the shop right now. We're finishing. It's our first, we've always been known as more of like a race shop. But we have a really good customer. We're building an X3 for that's just a dedicated sand car. It'll be done on Friday. And actually Sunday, we're going to go to the dunes. So I'm going to bring a car and that'll be my first time out there.
Dude, that's awesome, man. You'll have to put it on social media. Let us know what you think, because I am always curious. It just seems like its own beast.
Yeah. I think a lot of the guys in Southern California, they can go to Glamis and do all that stuff. All we really have close to us is Sand Mountain, which is like, I mean, we pass it on the way to the races. You could literally like see the whole thing in a short drive by.
That's a bummer.
It's
But
Sand Mountain, and that's what it is. It's one Sand Mountain.
now that's a problem. I won't say a problem, but that's something we experience in the East Coast too. Is like Adventure Off-Road Park, where they're having the race, is 500 acres, and then you go, next door to Windrock, and it's Windrock Brimstone Royal Blue is like 180,000 acres. But West Coast, you guys have tons of space to go. Do you ever do any like long distance travels or long distance rides?
We'll go like for fun. I'll take my dad and we'll go start pretty much in Reno, and we'll go to like Tonopah, stay the night in the hotel there, and then cruise on the way back. So that's like maybe a 500-mile round trip.
That's amazing. If I had to put 500 miles on my car here, like in the East Coast, I would have to drive 500 miles on the asphalt.
Yeah. No, we can go a bunch of fun day trips. Like, I'll just go on Google Earth Pro and find a bunch of trails and make a path on there, and then load it in and go exploring. We did it the other day actually, and on Google Earth everything looked good, and then there was a big fire, and they'd cut all these trees down, so they're blocking the road everywhere.
Oh my gosh, man! What are you loading it into? Let me ask that for people listening.
Lead nav.
Okay, lead nav. Okay, very cool.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this: fires. There's we've recently seen a little bit of uptick on the social media about fires and things like that. But you're in California. There's obviously some really rough fires last year. Was that all in South California, or was that still some in North California as well?
No, we had some real bad ones up here. It was paradise. Like literally the whole town burned down.
Wow.
It's been crazy for us. Like last year, I had an electrician come out and hook up a generator and everything in my house, just because they're so worried about fires.
Yeah.
That the electrical company is shutting off our power, because if the wind picks up at all, they say the lines are sparking and starting these fires. So they shut off the power. Like our house literally had, in the middle of summer last year, no power for probably 13 days. Not all at one run, but 3 days at a time here and there.
Wow. Now, how hot is it getting? I mean, is it just the fact that it's dry, or is it just the heat?
Like a high for us is like 100, 102 here.
That's awful. It sounds awful.
But
yeah.
Even everybody in the foothill area here is like losing homeowners insurance based off of the fire danger. Like the homeowners insurance aren't even like saying, "Hey, we're raising it." They're just straight dropping you.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, what do you do? I mean, what do you do next? You've established a business there. I mean, you can't go somewhere. What do you do?
I don't know. We always joke about moving to a different state and getting out of California or something, but it's so nice where we live here. My family's all super close. Like my dad lives a mile one direction. My sister lives a mile the other direction. Like, and we're out on like country roads. So I can drive the race car to my parents' house for dinner,
That's pretty amazing.
I don't see myself leaving here.
If you were going to go, where else would you go? Everyone says Texas from California.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I'm in Nevada so much for racing. That would be the only benefit, would be not to drive,
Yeah.
Silver State for us is 620 miles to get there, So we're putting miles on the chase trucks like crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy. So what has been, let me ask you this, the single best upgrade that you've made to these machines, whether it be performance or comfort or whatever when you're going out and you're like, you put something on your car, you made an adjustment to the car, what's the one thing that stands out where you're just like, whoa, that was like, this has to be on every machine?
I'd like to say it was some parts that we build here.
Yeah, of course.
But the truth is having a good shock tuner. People want to add horsepower and do all this stuff, and it's like the thing that's going to make you the very fastest is spinning it on shocks.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no substitute to a good shock setup.
Now, the stock shocks that come on the Can-Ams are the Fox 3.0 internal bypasses, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
We race with factory shocks. I mean, they're factory outer bodies. We change the inner bodies in them, and we really are just doing that to change hole position for the bypass flows.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, we're running a stock shock just calibrated to our needs.
Gotcha. Now, If you had to, because for some reason I have a guy that does my shocks for me now. He just joined the show as a sponsor, and it's been really great to have him because I've learned a lot. But
Mhm.
if you were trying to convince someone to get a shock upgrade, whether it be recreational or racer or what have you, what would you say to them? And if they could only afford revalving or springs, which one would you do first?
That's the shocks are the one thing we don't do ourselves. I use Wayne from Alltech Motorsports.
Mm-hmm.
He does all of our shock work for us. Um, it's hard, there's lots of people that just send their shocks out and say, oh, this is the type of riding I do. I think the biggest benefit is meeting with a shock tuner that can actually watch you drive the car and make adjustments from there. Like I don't even know what Wayne's doing to the shocks, but I just know how to communicate to him, hey, it feels like this. And he goes, okay. And he knows what he needs to do to it.
Mm-hmm.
I think spring rate and some inner body changes and a little bit of valving. So I guess kind of you're touching all aspects of it. But in say like 2020 cars on the Can-Ams, they were able to get the ride height up a little bit taller on them.
Mm-hmm.
So the shock setup is better on those. The 4-seaters have always had a really good shock setup. I'd say like 17, 18, and 19, the 2-seaters are where we really made some big changes to them.
Mm-hmm.
But just shock work, but for the person's driving style, you can say, oh, my car is 2,000 pounds and I ride in the sand.
Yeah.
And somebody gives you a shock setup, but your version or my version of what we like, like say most of my customers, they go, I want what you have. And we put it on their car and they hate it.
Yeah, I was about to say that's a horrible thing to say to a race car driver.
Yeah, they go, oh, it's way too stiff. I don't like it, and it's like, if I was weekend riding my car around, it would be a little bit harsh.
Yeah, certainly. That was so. I actually somewhat inherited a full-blown race car. I inherited this Polaris RS1. I got it from actually a giveaway, and it was fully set up for a race. And got in it, took it out, like trying to get my bearings in it, and I thought my back was going to just blow out the sides because I didn't understand necessarily when you go faster how much it smooths out. And I called the guy and I was like, this is wild because are you sure you have these clickers on the right setting? Because I'm going fast. Like I was probably doing 35, 40 and I was still getting the crap beat out of me. And he's like, no. Like you gotta, like when you go fast, it goes. And I realized that 35 and 40 are not fast.
We've been, I don't know if you want to jump into it or not, but we've been playing with the Smart Shock technology that's in the new car.
Thank you.
I have a pre-runner play car here that has the setup on it. And I think that is going to be the technology that shocks are going is crazy. Cause typically we set a car up, to take a big G out, or, we go to a course and we set it up. We want it just to work really good in small chatter, and we'll slow down on the big G outs. Cause it's kind of depending on what the course has, it's like we go race Laughlin and it's pretty much just big whoops the whole time,
Yeah.
Silver State, the whole course is smooth. That setup is cool. Cause you can literally change the settings as you're driving.
Get this. That's fine. And that's one of the really unique things that we've seen. Like, obviously, the dynamic system on the Polaris came out recently, but the Smart Shock system, the really cool factor about it is it's not just compression; it's compression and rebound. Correct?
Yeah.
So, can you explain what does having the technology on the rebound side? What does that do for the car versus just the standard, compression of the tire?
Yeah, I think it does. It does a lot for it, especially when you want to go from like a looser desert setup that you can be bombing through the whoops and you want the rebound really fast. And then if you put the car in sport mode and it's going to actually slow the rebound down, you're going to be able to corner because your inside tires aren't just going to unload. The rebound's going to be slower. So it's going to help with cornering, where say like another setup that's just adjusting the DSC on top is really only going to help on big hits. It's never going to help you with cornering or anything like that.
That's so interesting. It's such an interesting thing because, or at least when I think about shocks, I think about, okay, I am going through rocks and I need, full movement, all those things. And then I think, okay, the other spectrum would be high speed straight lines and just taking massive amounts of shock in.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. I know that Can-Am doesn't have, there's one, well, let me phrase it like this. Razor has one option that Can-Am doesn't have, which is like the "oh shit" button, where you just press the button and it locks it out. Is there any other kind of bells and whistles that the Can-Am Smart Shocks have that are kind of similar to that?
I saw that on the Razor, and I was actually talking to the guys at Can-Am. I said, hey, why don't we have this emergency button or whatever you want to call it on the steering wheel? And they said, I could be wrong on this, but the Polaris has like a G meter in the center of the dashboard, and that's it. That's what it's pulling all of its data from to control the shocks. Where the new Can-Am has the G meter in the center of the dash. It has vertical G meters in all four corners of the cage. But I think where it's really upper hand is that it has on the upper A-arms in the front and on the trailing arm pivots, it knows where it's at in the ride height of the shock. So like say in a Polaris, that thing has to sense the G meter to take the hit, where the Can-Am, it sees it in that shock shaft travel instantly. And they said the system is so smart, you would never need the button on there. It's going to be faster than you are reaching over and hitting the button yourself.
Now, see, that to me makes perfect sense. And I'm not sure why, like, I did a whole 40 minutes on the comparison of the two systems, and I couldn't find that information anywhere because I just don't know if they've released it. I know they haven't seemed to come out and have their like vendor interviews or things like that where they've really gone in depth with it. But that to me, makes those two systems not equal. It makes those two systems, one's very technologically advanced, but it's got some real thought behind it. And I think that's, again, here's my Polaris rate machine. I think that's where Can-Am is really taking leaps and bounds forward. Is they're very thoughtful with each thing that's happening, and Razor just kind of has, I guess, laid the groundwork. Maybe I guess that's the right way to say it.
Yeah, on a dynamic setup, or like even in my Ford Raptor or something, you're only controlling fluid flow into the reservoir, and that's really all you have control of in that system.
Yeah.
Where this, I'm not exactly sure how it all works, but it's controlling the piston of the shock, so it's your actual base valving that it's adjusting, and it's adjusting it crazy fast. It's weird to drive for me to first start out, because I typically have a setup where I'm going to hit a G out, and I know like, okay, the car's going to bottom out. I've hit enough stuff like this. I know what it's going to do. That car, it's weird that it's thinking on its own, and you're used to going, oh, it's going to bottom out super hard. And all of a sudden the shock just does it on its own. And you're like clinched up, and you're like, oh, I didn't need to be so tight right there.
Yeah. So the car is essentially, it's taking a little bit of the element of I guess not the driver necessarily, but the expectation of the driver and changing it. How much time have you had in that car? Because I would imagine it's going to make a big impact on how you actually were to drive that vehicle.
Yeah. I probably have maybe like 400 or 500 miles in it right now.
Okay.
I'd say we're about to get a lot more. I kind of got it right when all this madness started really kicking off and everybody was locked down. And now that we're kind of in our break to Vegas to Reno, we'll go use it a lot more. It's fun though. It's adapting to a car that's smart, that's not just, I don't want to say it's not predictable. It's not predictable in a better sense, but I'm just used to being able to predict a suspension setup.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you're dealing with something that's constantly changing, whereas before, if you sprung the car to be softer and you had this big washout, you would expect the G out. Now that it's moving target, it's different. Your expectations are different.
I think in the rocks, like King of the Hammers is where that setup is going to be awesome. Say you go
next. How do you, what terrain works with what? Because, I think there's three modes on there. Is the Comfort really built for those heavy rocks, heavy rock trails, things like that? And the Sport really built for the wide open sections?
So it's got Comfort, Sport, and then Sport Plus. Okay. And it's a three-way like rocker style switch. Comfort mode is definitely like, I don't know, say King of the Hammers qualifying course. Our cars are set up pretty stiff to go through the desert fast. Well, you go up some really like loose, shaly, rocky hills, and we're kind of sacrificing traction based off of the car being so stiff. You put it in, let's say you just ran the qualifying course, you put the car in Comfort mode. It's going to go way better up those hills. But the nice part is, even in Comfort mode, if you left it in there and you accidentally hit a big old hole, it's going to see, the shaft speed or however it's going to sense it and the wheel travel, and it's still going to even take Comfort mode and put it super stiff right at the bottom of the stroke.
That's pretty amazing.
I think the nice part would be going like, the biggest thing in side-by-sides that was weird for me is going downhill on the rocks. You go downhill in like a solid axle car or something, the solid axle is your lowest point to the ground. In an independent car, you drop off, and the skid plate, when you drop off of a ledge, gets closer to the ground. If there's a rock at the bottom, the skid plate slams into the rock because you're losing ride height there. If you could go like sport mode, which is the stiffest, and put it in there going downhill, then all of a sudden you're not losing. You got two different setups. You're not losing travel going down the hill. Where right now we're like riding the brake, and right before we hit, we're blipping the throttle a little bit to keep the skid plate off the ground.
Yeah, you're essentially kind of doing this right now, whereas another system will do it for you. Now, that kind of raises my other question is, I went and rode with David Uptain from Razor Life, and he has this monstrosity of a Pro XP on portals and 37s, all kinds of craziness. But he has a dynamic system on there. And there was just a simple, we were out trail riding. There was a simple ledge, and he essentially just wanted more ground clearance. So, he went from soft, tried it a couple times in comfort or whatever Polaris calls it, and pushed it all the way to the firmest setting. And I watched him kind of hit the suspension, fully load. And when it unloaded, he gained probably 3 to 4 inches, maybe even 5 inches of actual shaft showing out on the system, and obviously gave him more ride height because of that. Is there that benefit of ride height, or is it just the actual pistons and the fluids and things being treated differently in the shock?
I don't think you're going to gain that ride height setup. I think that is probably the button on the steering wheel, and because it's locking the shock out. So when their car is drooping on free weight, it's locking the pistons out to where they can keep the ride height stuck like that. I haven't gone like in any crazy rock trails in this car. I'm sure it will soon. I'm curious to see if it'll do that or not, but I have heard the guys in the other brands doing that, locking the suspension out to gain ride height when they're bellied on something.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I've seen it in person with multiple people who have the car. They'll belly on a ledge and soft, and then they will literally just flip the switch, back up, hit it, and it just, you just peg-legged it out, and it just skirts right up. It seems to be a massive advantage. And I was even talking with a few of the Polaris factory guys, and they're like, yeah, we'll run it in firm the whole way through the rock section and just, kind of take the back, the back pain you get with it, just run it there, because it's just, you just skirt across the top and it's so much easier.
Yeah. That's why I think with the smart shocks, you're going to be able to have the best of both worlds. I think you can run through the rocks and still have the comfort, and it's going to sense the hard hit on there. Now,
someone who, because the price tag for these cars just keeps going up. And I think that's one of the concerns that the everyman like myself sees is, I've got mine's just a regular XP model. It's not worth, more than 12 grand. So, they're seeing numbers like 36,000 and things like that. If you were to buy, let me ask you this, what's the pitch for, hey, I really think that this is the car that you should buy, when you're telling someone to buy the Smart Shocks edition, because it's only available with, the top tier version of everything?
Yep. Like, what's my pitch on why they should buy it?
Yeah. If somebody comes to you and says, hey man, which car should I buy? What are you going to say?
Yeah. It's hard because I've always said to buy the RC car,
Yeah, for sure.
I think the RC car this coming up years doesn't have the Smart Shocks on it. The nice part is all the 72-inch cars and everything now are all coming with the Smart Lock diff in it.
Yes, good call. Great call by Can-Am.
So before, we were always getting the RC cars because they came with the Smart Lock diff in there. It's hard. I would either say get the Smart Shock car or get an RC car. I guess it really depends on what you want to do with it. If you want to be able to do everything, that RC cars, it comes with a factory winch, comes with a couple different things on it. But you can also easily take a Smart Shock car and turn it into an RC car in about an hour,
Yeah, for sure. Now, my only experience, I got a chance to ride in Hubert Rowland's the RC car. That car is violently fast.
Yeah.
So as a fabricator, you guys, you mentioned earlier, the goal being a driver for the factory team is kind of keep the car factory, reuse as much as the stock components as necessary. The main concern, I'm using air quotes here because not too many people bring it up, but my main concern would be for the X3, the chassis needs some bracing and things like that. Is there anything that people can do, or do you have anything to say kind of about the fact that, if you really want to get in there and race it, you need to tear the thing down and brace up the chassis just a little bit more? Is there anything else or any other suggestion?
Yeah, I mean, if you're desert racing, you definitely want to brace the chassis up, but I think you're going to want to on anything, it's
Sure.
just, well, I think we're at a point in Best in the Desert where we're using them for something that weren't fully designed to be driven so hard,
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I would say on the Can-Ams, definitely, at No Limit here, we make some. There's a handful of companies that make like a front bulkhead brace kit, and we pretty much take all the front A-arms and double shear them. Something that we do a little bit different on ours is we replace the sleeves inside the A-arms. Mm-hmm. For assembly on a factory vehicle, the bolt tolerances are a little bit bigger, so we pretty much take all that stuff and tighten everything up to a tight 12 millimeter and then double shear it. I would say that on the Can-Ams, lower A-arms, they want, or I guess not speaking for them, but they want an A-arm to be somewhat of a fusible link. You don't want to wipe out your frame. But like for us, when we really hard side load cars, it's hard on stock lower A-arms. So definitely do some A-arm upgrades. The back of the car is really solid. I mean, I guess pretty much like all of the UTVs is radius rods, especially if you're rock crawling, you're going to be taking out stock radius rods.
Yeah, for sure.
But I mean, like Bo's car that he races and works, it's 100% bolt together car. Like we never stripped it down and welded the frame all up. Like everything is just bolt on bracing.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. That's very encouraging as someone who, if I ever did get one, my hesitation would be, man, I feel like I need to take this apart, but it's good to know that there's bolt-on options, because I wouldn't be qualified to necessarily get in there and weld anything up too crazy.
Yeah.
So what's the future for you, Phil? Where are you going next? What's the next race? Are we guaranteed any more races for the season? What's it look like for you?
Best in the Desert will be our next race. Actually, next weekend, Bo, my co-driver, he's always wanted a desert race, so he's taking the car that we have with the Smart Shocks on it. He's going to go race the Vora Fallon 250 race.
Okay,
so
cool.
I can't co-drive. I get too car sick, so I can't offer that to him.
That's a great reason.
I'm gonna actually go pit for him and do all the pit support for him. So we'll do that one for fun, and we'll test a couple of things we want to try for Vegas to Reno in that smaller race. And then from there, I mean, hopefully we got an email from Best in the Desert saying Vegas to Reno's a full bore, good to go race. So hopefully we get to race the rest of the season out.
Yeah. Now, are you planning on doing any other Ultra 4 races other than King of Hammers it feels like so long ago. You planning any more Ultra 4 this year?
We just did a cage for Dave Cole and did a spare tire rack and stuff on an X3 for him.
Yeah.
So when he was up here, I think we might go race that race up in Reno that they're going to have, I think in September.
Yeah.
At the Wild West Motorsport Park there. That's normally like their national event or whatever, but I think the series kind of got flip-flopped around.
Yeah, it's a little interesting this year.
We always hope to do the Ultra 4 races. Normally they have the one at Prairie City, which is like 30 minutes from my shop. Just with me racing Best in the Desert and Bo racing all the work stuff, lots of times there's conflicts and races.
Yeah.
But for sure, King of the Hammers always.
Yeah, no, trust me, I understand. It's such an interesting thing that there's not a unified race league yet. It's really where I see like the side-by-side racing and the 4400 racing. I mean, that kind of is exclusive to Ultra 4, but side-by-sides in particular. I personally have a vision that there would be a unified race league that went from, dune races, a King of the Hammer style races, work style races, all the way down to, Southern rock racing, where they have more recently, rather than just doing like the crazy hill climbs and the razor buggies, incorporated more of a short course through the woods into a longer climb, because a lot of the vehicles, they work too well. So hills just kind of aren't cutting it here recently. So we've incorporated a lot more really neat stuff. But I would love to see a national series, maybe 5 races, one in each corner of the country, and then one right in the middle of the country, and to see who could be the United States, Mr. USA of the side-by-sides. Yeah.
I mean, sounds awesome to me. Put it together and I'll show up.
All right. How about that? I'll see what I can do, because I'm very interested in trying to make something like that happen. But before we close out, what is on your mind recently with just the state of the world and racing and things like that? Are you hopeful for the future? Do you think that it's going to be like this forever? What's going on? What are your thoughts?
Man, I try to, in the beginning, I was watching the news and doing all that stuff. I've kind of just taken, that was a little bit distracting. So I kind of checked out from it and just kind of lived my life. I got 2 little kids and stuff, so enjoy my time with them when I'm away from the shop.
Yeah.
I'd like to hope it doesn't stay this way.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think the virus is a real thing. I'm just curious if it's a little bit blown out of proportion for other different reasons.
Yeah.
I guess my thoughts is maybe when the election happens, we'll see what the real world's going to be like after that.
Man, I was telling my father-in-law the other day, I was like, just like all these riots and everything, whatever happens in November, regardless, I mean, who wins and what happens, like, I just foresee it. We're having another spike of riots, another spike of this and that. So yeah. I think 2020 will close out being just as wild as it decided to come in. So
yeah, we had a local like roundy round race course here, an asphalt course, and they couldn't have races, but they could legally have a protest. So all the racers went there to protest. The spectators protested and had to enter through the pit area, and they had a normal race, but it was a protest. So it's just a crazy world we're living in. It's legal to protest, but you can't race. It's like, come on, let's all go.
Amazing. I'll have to find like an article or something on that because I hadn't heard of that yet. That's really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, hopeful too. I'm hopeful because there's not many sports that are on right now, and I know that football is going to be back soon. And I'm not a big football guy, but no. I'm a big UFC guy, and I have to ask, do you keep up with UFC at all?
No, I went to a UFC when it was in Sacramento, and that was about the extent of it.
Okay. So the only reason I bring it up is this weekend, Dana White and his team have bought an island in Abu Dhabi, and they've set up like an octagon on the beach this weekend. And it's one of the few sports that's on right now. So I always like talking about it just because it's pretty much the only thing we've got going right now. But yeah. I'm hopeful because racing is starting to come back locally. Racing is coming back, it looks like, and it sounds like for the rest of us. In terms of the rest of the nation. I'm excited, but more than anything, I'm excited to see what you guys do with your car. I'm excited to see your continued success because, like I said, huge fan. Was definitely a starstruck moment when we got in touch, but it's so good. And with that, I mean, is there anybody else that you need to give a shout out to or anything else you want to say before we close it out?
I mean, we've got a ton of awesome sponsors behind us. Yeah, obviously, number one is Can-Am. And we've got BF Goodrich that's been supporting us pretty much since the beginning. Method Race Wheels, Factory UTV, RCV Performance, Superior Powder Coat, which my co-driver owns. That's why everybody goes, "You build a new car every single race." It's like, no, my co-driver owns a powder coat shop, and so he strips the car and powder coats and puts it back together.
Oh my gosh, that's so much work. That's amazing.
Yeah. But it looks like every time,
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's the best part about UTVs right now is there's so much backing in it. People ask if we're going to switch to trucks or anything in the future, and I don't see the financial backing and the support like the UTV class is getting right now.
Do you think that UTVs will eventually be on like ESPN and things like that? I mean, we're making our way onto the CBS Sports Channel, but I mean, I think we're on the verge of being the next NASCAR.
I'd like to hope so. I mean, you look at like Supercross and all that stuff, how big it is, and it's all OEMs behind that. And so you'd hope that side-by-sides will get to the same point.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you one more thing before we kind of close it off here. What's the future of side-by-sides? Can-Am's taking a huge leap by adding more technology to the car. Razor is hopefully not too far behind. Kawasaki KRX just released their 2021 models, and, just they've got the solid cars that can't seem to break and things like that. Where does the side-by-side market go next? Where does, how can they keep improving these cars?
I don't know. I'm just as curious as you on that one. They've gotten bigger and faster, and people are buying bigger toy haulers and everything to haul them from what they first did.
Yeah.
I'll be real curious to see like how fast they're going. It's like my car, we've had it over 100 miles an hour now, which
Dude,
like before there's no way a side-by-side's going over 100, so yeah. I don't know how fast they can get going. Silver State, we beat all the 10 cars, so that puts into perspective how fast these cars are getting.
Now, Silver State was the race where they had to actually cut short because of fires, right?
Yeah.
Were you guys on course when they made that change?
Yeah, so on the starting line, they said, hey, you guys might finish at pit 7 because the fire is about to cross the road, but we're not sure yet, so we'll let your pit crew know. And then probably pit 4, when we got fuel, all of a sudden they go, hey, finish line's at pit 6 now. So we started not knowing if it was at 7 or the regular finish, and then all of a sudden they got cut to pit 6, which if we would have known earlier, we would have changed some fuel strategy stuff, but we just with our normal game plan and paid off.
Now, I see some race, I don't want to say this, some race leagues and, certain races, for example, they will do a very quick, like change right in the middle of a race or change in the middle of a season. What do you think about that? Is that fair? Because there could have been a guy in 4th place who is hoping to really crush you between pit 6 and 8.
Yeah. Best in the Desert is really good about not changing rules and sticking to them. I think this race, they did the best they could.
Sure.
That was just an unforeseen situation there, that they handled. And yeah, I mean, they're moving the finish line and doing all this stuff. It's frustrating when you go to like smaller races and rules change based off of, we want this kind of car count here.
Yeah.
Best in the Desert is really fair for just sticking to what their program is.
Okay. Good to know. Because there's a lot of guys that listen to this. I have a very strange number of listeners in the California area. It's like outrageously more than anywhere else in the country. So a lot of these guys are reaching out to me asking, where can I go race? Or I've never raced before and I'd like to find out where I can go. So if you were in that amateur realm and someone had a race car they picked up, how would you advise someone to get started?
I mean, in our area, the Bora Series is really fun. It's only a couple desert races a year, and then they do like one short course race.
Mm-hmm.
But no racing is low budget, but it's a lot more affordable than racing, say, some of the bigger series. The rules aren't so lenient. They have a pro stock class. We went out there and like put number plates on a car and some window nets one time in a bone stock car. And then there's I think it's the AVE series. I've done like one of them. It's down in California City.
Okay.
Those are really fun. The nice thing about both those series is that you don't have to have all the chase trucks and everything. It's pretty much always around a loop that you can get back to, say, your motorhome or camp trailer or whatever and get fuel. So you don't have to go like where we're running 3 chase trucks at some races,
Dude, that's crazy.
You can literally like pull in your camping, get fuel, and go race for the day.
That would see now. I just in the Southeast, it's a lot. It's very very much the same. I'll say it like that because you're never further than 20 miles at best from your car. I would love to have kiss my wife goodbye and hey, we're gonna go start the race. I'll be back, and then come screaming into the pit in my car in my fire suit and just jump out and put fuel in the car and then just like peace out, I'm out and just go.
Yeah. Even Best in the Desert's doing their rally class now, which is at any races that's UTV only. So that if you don't have trucks and buggies on the course, so like any of the Laughlin races, the first Parker race, I think the last Parker race, you can race the rally class, which is cage, window nets. You can have a stock fuel tank. You just have to have secondary door latches.
Mm-hmm.
So it's cool. I mean, it gets pretty much, you get somebody to do the rally race and next thing you know, they want to build a full desert car.
Oh yeah. It's awful. I have that race under my belt and I'm like, just, if we weren't expanding our family, I would have 2 race cars in here right now, 1 trail, 1 just actual race car. But sometimes that's, different plans. We'll say it like that. But with that, that's pretty much all I had for you. Anything else you want to talk about that we didn't cover?
I think we covered quite a bit there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Phil, I've had a blast having you on. Again, super starstruck. So it's been really cool to talk to you. I wish you guys nothing but the best in the rest of the season. I hope you guys stay healthy, your family stays healthy, and don't catch yourself in between any of the weirdness that's been going on or any random city that decides to be taken over by people. So with that, we'll close it out, and I appreciate you being on, Phil.
Yeah, Bills, thank you.